century, the Roman Empire, beset by internal strife and external threats, made the strategic decision to withdraw its legions from Britain. This momentous departure marked the end of nearly 4 centuries of Roman rule, leaving a significant power vacuum in the region. The withdrawal was driven by the need to defend the crumbling empire's heartlands from barbarian invasions, and it left the native Romano-British population vulnerable to new threats. The absence of the disciplined and organised Roman military created an opportunity for other groups to assert dominance, fundamentally altering the trajectory of British history. Following the Roman exodus, Britain witnessed the migration and settlement of various Germanic tribes, most notably the Angles, Saxons and Jutes. These tribes, originating from what is now Denmark and northern Germany, began to settle in Britain in substantial numbers. The reasons for their migration were manifold, including population pressures, economic opportunities, and the allure of land and resources left unprotected by the Romans. The arrival of these tribes was not a single coordinated invasion, but rather a series of migrations over several decades. They established numerous settlements, often along the eastern and southern coasts of Britain, where they found fertile land and relatively little resistance from the fragmented and disorganised Romano-British communities. The fusion of Romano-British and Germanic cultures gradually began to shape the social and cultural landscape of early medieval Britain. Despite the initial conflicts and cultural differences, the two groups started to interact, trade, and intermarry. The Romano-British had retained some aspects of Roman civilization, such as Latin language, Christianity, and advanced agricultural practices. In contrast, the incoming Germanic tribes brought their own languages, pagan beliefs, and warrior culture. Over time, these interactions led to a unique cultural synthesis, characterized by a blend of Roman administrative practices and Germanic social structures. This fusion can be seen in the archaeological record, with evidence of mixed burial practices and the adoption of new artistic styles. The establishment of Anglo-Saxon kingdoms marked a new era in British history. By the late 6th century, several distinct Anglo-Saxon kingdoms had emerged, including Northumbria, Mercia, Wessex, and East Anglia. These kingdoms were often in competition with one another for territory and resources, leading to frequent conflicts and shifting alliances. Despite this fragmentation, the Anglo-Saxon period saw the development of a more structured and hierarchical society, with kings, nobles, and warriors playing prominent roles. The spread of Christianity, reintroduced by missionaries such as Augustine of Canterbury, also helped to unify these disparate kingdoms under a common religious framework. However, the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms were not free from external threats. Starting in the late 8th century, Viking raids began to pose a significant challenge to the stability and security of these nascent polities. The Vikings, seafaring warriors from Scandinavia, launched numerous raids on coastal monasteries, towns, and villages, exploiting the wealth and relative weakness of the Anglo-Saxon defences. Over time, these raids evolved into more prolonged invasions and settlements, particularly in areas like the Danelaw, where Viking influence became entrenched. The ongoing threat of Viking incursions forced the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms to adapt militarily and politically, leading to the eventual unification of England under leaders like Alfred the Great, who successfully defended against the Viking onslaught. The transition from Roman to Anglo-Saxon rule in Britain was a complex and tumultuous period, marked by significant upheaval and change. This era began with the withdrawal of Roman troops under Constantine III around 410 pressures from internal power struggles and external threats, Constantine III made the strategic decision to pull Roman legions out of Britain to support his campaigns on the continent. This departure left the Romano-British population in a precarious position, stripped of the military protection and administrative stability that Roman rule had provided for nearly 4 centuries. Without the disciplined Roman forces to defend them, the Romano-British were highly vulnerable to incursions and raids from various groups, including the Picts from the north and the Irish from the west. In response to these growing threats, the Romano-British leaders turned to a pragmatic solution. They enlisted Anglo-Saxon mercenaries to bolster their defences. These mercenaries, drawn from the Germanic tribes of the Angles, Saxons and Jutes, were initially seen as a temporary measure to provide much-needed military support. However, the relationship between the Romano-British and their Anglo-Saxon allies soon deteriorated. Disputes over land, resources and loyalty led to increasing tensions. The Anglo-Saxons, realising their military superiority and the vulnerability of their employers, eventually rebelled against the Romano-British. This rebellion marked the beginning of a new phase in Britain's history, characterised by the gradual but inexorable rise of Anglo-Saxon dominance. The desperation of the Romano-British during this period is poignantly captured in the historical appeal known as the Groans of the Britons. Faced with relentless attacks and an inability to defend themselves effectively, the Romano-British sent a plea for help to Flavius Aetius, a prominent Roman general stationed in Gaul. This appeal, famously addressing Aetius as the last of the Romans, highlighted the dire situation in Britain and begged for military assistance. However, the Western Roman Empire, struggling with its own crises, was in no position to provide aid. Concurrently, Emperor Honorius issued a directive informing the Britons that they would need to look to their own defences, effectively signalling the end of Roman responsibility for the province. The failure of the appeal to Aetius and the directive from Emperor Honorius underscored the isolation of Britain and the necessity for the Romano-British to fend for themselves. With no hope of Roman reinforcements, the power dynamics within Britain began to shift rapidly. The Anglo-Saxon mercenaries, now rebels, seized the opportunity to establish their own foothold in the land. Over time, these initial settlements expanded, and the Anglo-Saxon tribes began to carve out their own territories, leading to the formation of early Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. This period of transition was not merely a change in rulers, but a profound transformation of the cultural and social landscape of Britain. The departure of Roman administration and military might meant the loss of established systems of governance, infrastructure and trade. In their place, the Anglo-Saxon settlers brought new languages, customs and social structures. The blending of Romano-British and Anglo-Saxon elements eventually gave rise to a distinctive early medieval British culture. The presence of Germanic tribes in Britain predates the Anglo-Saxon invasions by several centuries, with evidence suggesting that Germanic mercenaries, known as foederati, were present in Britain even during the Roman occupation. These foederati were initially recruited by the Romans to bolster their defences against other hostile tribes and to maintain the stability of the frontier regions. Archaeological findings, such as grave goods and settlement patterns, indicate that these early Germanic groups were well integrated into the Roman military system. Items such as weapons, jewellery and pottery found in various sites across Britain suggest that these mercenaries not only served in the Roman army, but also settled and intermarried with the local population. The role role of Germanic foederati in Roman Britain is further evidenced by historical records. These records detail agreements between Roman officials and Germanic leaders, wherein the latter provided military assistance in exchange for land and other rewards. This symbiotic relationship was crucial for the Romans, particularly during times of heightened conflict with other tribes. The presence of Germanic soldiers within Roman legions and their subsequent settlement in Britain laid the groundwork for the later waves of Anglo-Saxon migration. Conflicts between the native British population and the Anglo-Saxon settlers began to escalate following the decline of Roman authority in Britain. As Roman influence waned in the early 5th century, the power vacuum left behind was quickly filled by various Germanic groups, including the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. These groups, initially invited as mercenaries to protect the Britons from other invaders, soon sought to establish their own territories. Historical accounts and archaeological evidence reveal a period marked by frequent skirmishes and battles as these newcomers clashed with the native Britons. The early infiltration of Germanic tribes into Britain significantly influenced Roman military strategy. Roman commanders had to adapt to the dual challenge of defending against external threats while managing the growing presence of Germanic foederati within their own ranks. This dual strategy included fortifying key positions, such as the Saxon shore forts, which were established to defend against sea-borne Germanic raiders. These coastal defences highlight the strategic importance placed on controlling the movement and settlement of Germanic tribes within Britain. Additionally, the integration of Germanic mercenaries into the Roman military apparatus reflects a broader Roman strategy of utilising barbarian troops to supplement their own forces. This practice was not unique to Britain, but was a common feature of Roman military policy across the empire. The presence of these troops within Roman Britain had lasting effects on the local culture and society, as these soldiers often settled permanently in the regions they were assigned to defend. The early Germanic presence in Britain, thus, was a complex and multifaceted phenomenon. It involved a blend of cooperation and conflict, with Germanic foederati playing a pivotal role in the defence and eventual transformation of Roman Britain. The interactions between these groups set the stage for the profound cultural and social changes that would define early medieval Britain, as the remnants of Roman civilization gradually gave way to the emerging Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. The transformation of Roman Britain into a landscape dominated by Anglo-Saxon kingdoms was both a gradual and tumultuous process. Central to understanding this period is the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a collection of annals detailing the establishment and growth of these kingdoms. Compiled in the late 9th century, the Chronicle offers invaluable insights into the political, social, and military developments of the time. It records the foundation of key kingdoms like Wessex, Mercia, and Northumbria, highlighting the pivotal moments and key figures that shaped their trajectories. These records are not merely historical accounts, but also serve as a testament to the evolving identity and self-perception of the Anglo-Saxons as they sought to legitimise their rule and heritage. The migration period, a time of significant movement and upheaval across Europe, saw various Germanic tribes, including the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, migrate to Britain. This period, roughly from the 4th to 6th centuries, was marked by widespread displacement and settlement of peoples across the continent. The reasons behind these migrations are complex, involving factors such as climate change, population pressures, and the collapse of the Roman Empire. In Britain, these movements led to the establishment of new political entities and the gradual erosion of Roman influence. migratory waves brought not only warriors and settlers, but also distinct cultural practices, languages, and social structures, which profoundly influenced the developing Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. In analysing the early interactions between Anglo-Saxons and the native British population, several theories of coexistence and demographic shifts emerge. One perspective suggests a relatively peaceful integration, where Anglo-Saxons settled among the existing population, leading to a blending of cultures and gradual assimilation. Archaeological evidence, such as mixed burial sites and the adoption of certain British customs, supports this view. Conversely, another theory posits a more hostile takeover, characterised by displacement and conflict. This view is backed by records of battles and the construction of defensive structures, indicating a period of sustained tension and resistance. The true nature of this coexistence likely lies somewhere between these extremes, with varying degrees of integration and conflict across different regions and periods. The demographic shifts during this time were profound. The influx of Germanic peoples led to significant changes in the ethnic and cultural landscape of Britain. Linguistically, Old English began to replace Latin and Celtic languages, reshaping the region's linguistic map. Socially, the introduction of Germanic customs, legal systems, and governance structures laid the foundation for the new Anglo-Saxon society. These shifts were not uniform. They varied widely depending on local conditions and the relative strength of the native and incoming populations. Nonetheless, the cumulative effect was a transformation that set the stage for the development of a distinctly Anglo-Saxon identity and the eventual emergence of England as a unified kingdom. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle and archaeological findings offer crucial windows into this transformative era. Through their study, historians can piece together the complex mosaic of migration, settlement, and cultural interchange that defined the early medieval period in Britain. The Chronicle in particular serves as a cornerstone for understanding the formation of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, providing a narrative that intertwines historical events with the evolving self-identity of the Anglo-Saxon people. As we delve deeper into these sources, the rich tapestry of this formative period becomes increasingly clear, highlighting the dynamic and multifaceted nature of Anglo-Saxon expansion and establishment in post-Roman Britain. The period following the initial establishment of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms was marked by significant conflict and territorial struggles. One of the pivotal moments in this era was the resistance and victory led by Ambrosius Aurelianus at Mount Baden. Ambrosius, a Romano-British leader, emerged as a key figure in resisting Anglo-Saxon advances. His victory at the Battle of Mount Baden, traditionally dated to around 500 AD, was a decisive moment that temporarily halted the Anglo-Saxon expansion. According to historical sources, this victory provided a period of relative peace and stability, allowing the native British forces to regroup and fortify their positions. The legend of this battle has also been immortalised in later medieval literature, contributing to the mythic status of leaders like King Arthur, who is often associated with these resistance efforts. Despite such setbacks, the expansion and territorial changes under Anglo-Saxon rulers like Ceawlin of Wessex illustrate the relentless push of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms to consolidate and extend their control. Ceawlin, who ruled Wessex in the late 6th century, was a particularly aggressive and successful ruler. His campaigns expanded Wessex territory significantly, pushing westwards into British-held lands. Ceawlin's victories at battles, such as the Battle of Dereham in 577 AD were crucial in securing key strategic areas and further diminishing the power of the native British kingdoms. These expansions were not merely territorial, but also involved the assimilation and integration of conquered peoples, reshaping the demographic and cultural landscape of the region. The dynamics of resistance and expansion during this period were complex and multifaceted. Leaders like Ambrosius Aurelianus and Ceawlin of Wessex epitomised the era's contrasting forces, the struggle to preserve and the drive to conquer. This continual push and pull between resistance and expansion shaped the political and cultural development of early medieval Britain, laying the groundwork for the future evolution of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Through battles and treaties, alliances and enmities, the map of Britain was redrawn, reflecting the turbulent yet formative nature of this historical epoch. The emergence of the heptarchy marked a significant period in early medieval British history, characterised by fluid power dynamics among the various Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. This era, spanning from the 5th to the 9th century, saw the rise and fall of 7 prominent kingdoms: East Anglia, Mercia, Northumbria, Wessex, Essex, Kent and Sussex. Each kingdom's influence waxed and waned over time, creating a complex web of alliances, conflicts and shifting power balances. The heptarchy was not a formalised system, but rather a convenient term used to describe the predominant political entities during this period. The constant interplay between these kingdoms shaped the landscape of medieval Britain, setting the stage for future unification and consolidation under a single monarchy. East Anglia, Mercia, Northumbria and Wessex were among the most influential kingdoms during the heptarchy. East Anglia, located in the eastern part of modern-day England, was known for its strong maritime connections and thriving trade networks. The kingdom's prosperity was largely due to its strategic position along the North Sea, facilitating commerce and cultural exchange with continental Europe. East Anglia's rulers, such as King Raedwald, played crucial roles in the political affairs of the time, often acting as power brokers between rival kingdoms. Mercia, situated in the heart of England, emerged as a dominant force during the 7th and 8th centuries. Under the leadership of kings like Penda and Offa, Mercia expanded its territory through military conquests and strategic marriages. Offa, in particular, is remembered for constructing Offa's Dyke, a massive earthwork delineating the boundary between Mercia and the Welsh kingdoms. This ambitious project symbolised Mercia's power and its ability to control vast regions. The kingdom's central location also made it a critical player in the political and economic affairs of Anglo-Saxon England. Northumbria, encompassing parts of modern-day northern England and southeastern Scotland, was another key kingdom during the heptarchy. Known for its rich cultural and intellectual contributions, Northumbria was home to renowned monasteries such as Lindisfarne and Jarrow, which produced illustrious scholars like Bede. The kingdom's fluctuating fortunes were marked by periods of great power and influence, particularly under rulers like Edwin and Oswald. Northumbria's dominance in the north was a significant factor in the broader dynamics of the Anglo-Saxon period. Wessex, located in the south of England, rose to prominence in the late 8th and early 9th centuries. Initially a relatively minor player, Wessex's fortunes changed under the leadership of King Alfred the Great. Alfred's military and administrative reforms, along with his successful defence against Viking invasions, laid the foundations for Wessex's eventual dominance over the other Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. The kingdom's ability to adapt and innovate in the face of external threats testament to its resilience and strategic acumen. In contrast to these major kingdoms, the smaller realms of Essex, Kent and Sussex played more localised but still significant roles in the heptarchy. Essex, located to the northeast of London, maintained its independence through a combination of diplomacy and strategic alliances. Kent, one of the earliest established Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, was notable for its early adoption of Christianity, which facilitated its integration into the broader European cultural and religious framework. Sussex, situated along the southern coast, often found itself caught between the ambitions of its larger neighbours. Despite their smaller size, these kingdoms contributed to the rich tapestry of Anglo-Saxon Britain, each leaving its mark on the historical landscape. The interplay between these kingdoms was marked by a continuous struggle for supremacy, with alliances forming and dissolving in response to shifting power dynamics. The heptarchy was a time of constant change, where military prowess, strategic marriages, and political acumen determined the rise and fall of kingdoms. This period laid the groundwork for the eventual unification of England, as the lessons learned and the precedents set during the heptarchy informed the strategies and decisions of future rulers. Through their interactions, these kingdoms collectively shaped the course of English history, leaving a legacy that would resonate for centuries to come. The early medieval period in Britain was marked by significant shifts in power and recurring conflicts among various kingdoms. Ethelbert of Kent's dominance was a crucial factor in shaping the political landscape during this time. As one of the most influential rulers, Ethelbert not only extended his authority over a considerable part of southern England, but also established Kent as a centre of power. His reign was characterised by the introduction of Christianity to the Anglo-Saxons, facilitated by his marriage to Bertha, a Christian princess from Paris. This alliance significantly strengthened his position and laid the foundation for the spread of Christianity across England. However, following his death, the power dynamics shifted considerably, with rival kingdoms vying for supremacy. The struggle for dominance continued with the conflict between Edwin of Deira, Penda of Mercia, and Cadwallon ap Cadfan of Gwynedd. Edwin, a prominent Northumbrian king, sought to expand his influence, but his ambitions were met with fierce resistance from Penda and Cadwallon. Penda, a formidable warrior king of Mercia, formed an alliance with Cadwallon, the king of Gwynedd, to challenge Edwin's authority. The alliance culminated in the Battle of Hatfield Chase in 633, where Edwin was defeated and killed. This victory significantly bolstered Penda's status and marked the beginning of a tumultuous period of warfare among the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. The ongoing conflict between Northumbria and Mercia was a defining feature of this era, with Penda leading numerous campaigns against his northern rivals. Penda's relentless aggression and military prowess earned him a fearsome reputation. He consistently sought to undermine Northumbrian power, engaging in several significant battles. One notable encounter was the Battle of Massafield in 642, where Penda defeated and killed Oswald of Northumbria. This victory further cemented Mercia's position as a dominant force. However, Penda's campaigns were not without setbacks, and his eventual defeat and death at the Battle of the Winwade in 655 marked a turning point, leading to a temporary decline in Mercian power. Despite these fluctuations in power, Mercia's prominence continued to grow, particularly under the reign of Offa. Offa's rule from 757 to 796 is often regarded as a golden age for Mercia, One of his most notable achievements was the construction of Offa's Dyke, a massive earthwork marking the boundary between Mercia and the Welsh kingdoms. This monumental feat demonstrated not only Mercia's engineering capabilities, but also Offa's determination to secure and defend his territory. Offa's Dyke symbolised Mercian strength and served as a lasting testament to his reign. Under Offa, Mercia reached the height of its power, exerting influence over much of southern England and establishing itself as a preeminent kingdom. The spread of Christianity in Britain marked a significant transformation in the cultural and religious landscape of Anglo-Saxon society. This period saw the gradual introduction of Christian beliefs and practices, which eventually permeated various aspects of daily life. Early Christian influences began to take root through the efforts of missionaries and the establishment of monasteries, which served as centres of learning and religious observance. These early foundations set the stage for a broader acceptance and integration of Christianity into Anglo-Saxon culture. Evangelization efforts played a crucial role in the spread of Celtic Christianity across Britain. Missionaries such as St. Augustine of Canterbury, who was sent by Pope Gregory the Great in 597 AD, were instrumental in converting the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Augustine's mission established a foothold in Kent, where King Ethelbert and his court were among the first to embrace the new faith. The conversion of influential leaders helped to catalyse the acceptance of Christianity among the general populace, as the religion gradually spread from the south to other regions of Britain. In parallel, Celtic Christianity, which had already taken root in regions like Ireland and Scotland, began to exert its influence on Britain. Monks from Iona, a centre of Celtic Christian learning, travelled to Northumbria and other parts of Britain to preach and establish monasteries. Figures such as St. Aidan and St. Cuthbert became prominent in these missionary activities, contributing to the spread of Christian teachings and practices. These efforts were marked by a distinctive Celtic flavour, characterised by unique liturgical practices and a strong emphasis on monasticism and asceticism. A significant milestone in the history of Christianity in Anglo-Saxon Britain was the Synod of Whitby in 664 AD. This ecclesiastical council was convened to resolve conflicts between the Roman and Celtic Christian practices that had developed in different parts of Britain. The primary issues at stake included the method of calculating the date of Easter and certain ecclesiastical customs. The synod, held at the monastery of Whitby, was presided over by King Oswic of Northumbria and attended by prominent church figures from both traditions. The decision at the Synod of Whitby to adopt Roman Christian rites marked a turning point in the religious unification of Britain. King Oswic's choice to follow the Roman customs, influenced by the persuasive arguments of Bishop Wilfrid, led to the standardisation of practices across the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. This unification under Roman rites facilitated greater cohesion within the Church in Britain and strengthened its ties with the broader Christian world, particularly the papacy in Rome. The adoption of Roman practices also brought about significant changes in ecclesiastical organisation and liturgical practices, aligning the British Church more closely with continental European Christianity. The Viking raids on ecclesiastical sites marked a significant and tumultuous period in early medieval England. Beginning in the late 8th century, these raids targeted monasteries and churches, which were not only religious centres, but also repositories of wealth and knowledge. The attack on Lindisfarne in 793 is one of the most notorious early raids, signalling the start of a prolonged period of Viking aggression. The The Norsemen, driven by the promise of treasure and resources, conducted systematic invasions that eventually evolved into more extensive campaigns aimed at conquest and settlement. This shift from sporadic raids to organised invasions posed a severe threat to the existing Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. As Viking incursions became more frequent and destructive, the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms struggled to mount an effective defence. Among these, King Alfred of Wessex emerged as a pivotal figure in the resistance against the Norse invaders. Ascending to the throne in 871, Alfred faced an immediate and overwhelming Viking onslaught. Despite initial setbacks, Alfred's resilience became legendary. He implemented a series of defence strategies that would ultimately preserve his kingdom and lay the foundation for future English unity. One of Alfred's most significant military innovations was the establishment of a network of fortified towns known as burhs. These burhs served as defensive strongholds and administrative centres, providing refuge for the population and a base for military operations. This system not only hindered Viking movements, but also fostered a sense of security and stability within Wessex. Alfred's contributions extended beyond military and political domains. He also championed education and literacy, recognising their importance in cultural and national identity. Under his reign, the promotion of learning and literacy became a cornerstone of his governance. Alfred believed that a well-educated clergy and nobility were essential for effective governance and the preservation of Christian values. To this end, he invited scholars from across Europe to his court, initiating a renaissance of learning in his kingdom. One of his most enduring legacies in this area is the commissioning of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. This monumental work provides a contemporary account of England's history, documenting events year by year and offering invaluable insights into the period. The Chronicle not only served as a historical record, but also reinforced a sense of shared identity and continuity among the Anglo-Saxon people. The period of Mercian and Wessex leadership is marked by significant political changes and influential figures who shaped the course of English history. During this time, Mercia experienced substantial political reshuffling, a process greatly influenced by Ethelred and Ethelfled. Ethelred, known as the Lord of the Mercians, played a pivotal role in the political dynamics of Mercia. His leadership was characterised by strategic alliances and military campaigns aimed at consolidating power and defending against Viking invasions. Ethelfled, Ethelred's wife and daughter of King Alfred the Great, emerged as a remarkable leader after Ethelred's death. Known as the Lady of the Mercians, Ethelfled continued her husband's work, focusing on fortifying towns and expanding Mercian influence. Her leadership not only ensured the stability of Mercia, but also laid the groundwork for the eventual unification of England. During the same period, Edward the Elder, King of Wessex and son of Alfred the Great, embarked on a series of expansions that significantly altered the political landscape of England. Edward's campaigns were aimed at reclaiming territories lost to Viking control and strengthening the hold of Wessex over other Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. His military successes were instrumental in expanding the influence of Wessex, setting the stage for future unification efforts. Edward's strategic marriages and alliances also played a crucial role in consolidating power and creating a network of loyal supporters across the kingdom. Following Edward's reign, his son Aethelstan continued the work of unification, earning a reputation as one of the greatest Anglo-Saxon kings. Aethelstan's reign was marked by decisive military victories and diplomatic acumen, which enabled him to bring together the various Anglo-Saxon kingdoms under a single rule. His success in unifying England was not just a result of military might, but also of his ability to forge alliances and integrate different regions into a cohesive political entity. The reign of Edgar the Peaceful, another significant figure in this era, was notable for both its achievements and its challenges, particularly in Northumbria. Edgar's reign is often remembered for its relative peace and stability, which allowed for administrative and ecclesiastical reforms. However, his rule was also marked by tensions in Northumbria, a region with a history of resistance against southern control. The tensions in Northumbria were a constant challenge, requiring careful management and strategic alliances to maintain stability. Edgar's ability to navigate these tensions and implement reforms was a testament to his political acumen. His reign saw the strengthening of monastic communities and the establishment of laws that would influence English governance for generations. The issues in Northumbria, however, highlighted the ongoing struggle to fully integrate the northern territories into a unified English kingdom. This period of leadership, marked by significant figures like Ethelred, Ethelflaed, Edward the Elder, Aethelstan, and Edgar, was crucial in shaping the future of England, setting the stage for the country's eventual unification and consolidation under a central authority. Ethelred. The Unready's reign was marked by a series of missteps and relentless Viking incursions that deeply affected the stability of England. Ethelred, who ruled from 978 to 1013, and then again from 1014 until his death in 1016, was often criticised for his inability to effectively counter the Viking threat. His epithet, unready, is derived from the Old English word unrayed, meaning poorly advised, and it accurately reflects the general perception of his leadership. Ethelred's policies, including the payment of large sums of Danegeld to the Vikings to buy temporary peace, only served to embolden the invaders. These payments drained the kingdom's resources and failed to provide a long-term solution to the persistent Viking raids. Sweyn Forkbeard, the Danish king, capitalised on Ethelred's weaknesses and launched a full-scale invasion of England in 1013. Sweyn's forces quickly gained control of large swathes of the country, forcing Ethelred to flee to Normandy. Sweyn was declared King of England, but his sudden death in 1014 led to a temporary restoration of Ethelred to the throne. However, Ethelred's return did little to stabilise the kingdom, as Viking incursions continued unabated. It wasn't until Sweyn's son, Canute the Great, asserted his claim that the situation began to change. Canute, demonstrating strategic acumen and military prowess, defeated Ethelred's forces and solidified his control over England by 1016. Canute's reign marked the beginning of the North Sea Empire, a formidable political entity that included England, Denmark, and parts of Norway and Sweden. His consolidation of power brought a degree of stability and prosperity to England that had been absent during Ethelred's rule. Sienut's effective governance, marked by fair laws and strong administrative structures, helped to integrate the various regions of his empire and ensure relative peace. The North Sea Empire under Canute represented a significant shift in the political landscape of Northern Europe, demonstrating the potential for a unified Scandinavian influence over a large and diverse territory. The death of Canute the Great in 1035 precipitated a series of succession crises that further destabilised England. His passing left a power vacuum that his sons, Harold Harefoot and Harthacnut, vied to fill. The ensuing conflicts and political manoeuvrings weakened the central authority and made England vulnerable to external threats and internal dissent. Harold Harefoot managed to claim the throne initially, but his rule was short-lived, and upon his death, Harthacnut assumed power. Harthacnut's reign was also brief and troubled, leading to a period of uncertainty and further succession disputes. Amidst this turmoil, Edward the Confessor emerged as a significant figure. Ascending to the throne in 1042, Edward sought to restore stability and re-establish royal authority. His reign is often noted for its relative peace and the strengthening of administrative functions. However, Edward faced challenges in asserting his dominance, particularly from the powerful Godwin family, who held considerable influence over English politics. Edward's reliance on Norman advisors and his piety earned him respect, but also contributed to tensions with the English nobility. The Godwin family's prominence grew during this period, significantly impacting the political landscape. Earl Godwin of Wessex, a formidable and ambitious noble, became one of Edward's most powerful subjects. His influence extended through his marriage alliances and the strategic placement of his sons in key positions of power. The death of Edward the Confessor in January 1066 left the English throne without a clear heir, sparking a fierce competition among various claimants. Harold Godwinson, who was crowned king shortly after Edward's death, faced immediate challenges to his rule. One of the most significant threats came from William, Duke of Normandy, who claimed that Edward had promised him the throne years earlier. Additionally, Harold Hardrada, the King of Norway, also laid claim to the English crown, asserting a right through his Viking lineage and previous agreements with Senut's descendants. These competing claims set the stage for a series of intense and bloody battles that would shape the future of England. Alliances with Viking forces played a crucial role in the conflicts of 1066. Harold Hardrada, leveraging his formidable Viking fleet and army, allied with Tostig Godwinson, Harold's estranged brother, to bolster his invasion force. This alliance significantly increased the threat to Harold Godwinson's reign, as Hardrada's experience and the combined Viking forces presented a formidable challenge. The first major clash occurred at the Battle of Fulford Gate on September 20th, 1066. Hardrada and Tostig's forces met the northern English earls Edwin and Morcar near York. Despite the English forces' determined defence, the Vikings emerged victorious, inflicting heavy casualties and seizing control of the region. This victory, however, was short-lived. Harold Godwinson, demonstrating remarkable speed and military acumen, marched his army north and confronted the Viking invaders at the Battle of Stamford Bridge on September the 25th, 1066. In a fierce and decisive battle, Harold's forces managed to surprise and overwhelm Hardrada's army, resulting in Hardrada's death and the near total annihilation of the Viking contingent. This victory effectively ended the Viking threat to Harold's reign, forcing the remaining invaders to retreat. However, Harold's triumph at Stamford Bridge left his forces exhausted and ill-prepared for the next and most significant challenge, William of Normandy's invasion. William had assembled a formidable invasion fleet and landed at Pevensey on the southern coast of England in late September 1066. Harold, upon hearing of William's landing, hurried his troops south, covering an extraordinary distance in a short time. The two armies finally met at the Battle of Hastings on October the 14th, 1066. The Battle of Hastings was a pivotal and brutal engagement that would determine the fate of the English crown. William's well-prepared and strategically positioned forces faced Harold's weary but determined army. The battle raged for an entire day, characterised by fierce hand-to-hand combat, tactical feints, and the crucial use of cavalry by the Normans. Despite Harold's leadership and the valour of his troops, the tide turned against the English. Harold was killed in the late stages of the battle, and with his death, the cohesion of the English forces collapsed. William of Normandy's victory at the Battle of Hastings in October 1066 was a turning point that culminated in his coronation as King of England on Christmas Day, 1066. This event marked the beginning of Norman rule and the consolidation of William's control over his newly acquired kingdom. Following his coronation, William faced the formidable task of securing his hold on England, which involved both military and administrative strategies. He systematically moved to quell resistance, subdue rebellious regions, and establish his authority across the country. One of the most notorious campaigns undertaken by William to secure his control was the Harrying of the North, conducted between 1069 and 1070. This brutal series of campaigns was aimed at crushing the uprisings in the north of England, which had become a focal point of resistance against Norman rule. William's forces laid waste to vast swathes of territory, destroying villages, crops, and livestock. This scorched earth policy led to widespread famine and suffering, effectively breaking the spirit of the northern insurgents and cementing Norman dominance. The harrying of the north had long-lasting repercussions, decimating the local population and economy, and facilitating the displacement of the Anglo-Saxon elite. As William secured his power, he implemented significant changes that marked the end of the Anglo-Saxon era and the beginning of a new Norman order. One of the most visible impositions was the construction of imposing Norman castles and fortifications across the country. These structures, such as the Tower of London and Windsor Castle, served both as military strongholds and symbols of Norman authority. They were strategically placed to control key areas and routes, reinforcing the presence and power of the Norman rulers. The introduction of the motte and bailey design revolutionised English castle architecture, making these fortifications more effective in both defence and control. In addition to architectural changes, the Normans brought with them a new cultural and administrative framework that reshaped English society. The introduction of the feudal system redefined land ownership and social hierarchy, with vast tracts of land being granted to Norman nobles in exchange for military service. This shift resulted in the displacement of the Anglo-Saxon aristocracy and the integration of Norman customs and governance. The Domesday Book, commissioned by William in 1086, exemplifies the thoroughness of the Norman administrative system. This comprehensive survey of England's lands and resources was a tool for efficient taxation and control, reflecting the new order imposed by the Normans. Culturally, the Norman influence permeated various aspects of life in England. The Normans brought their language, which gradually blended with Old English to form Middle English, profoundly affecting the English language. The Church also underwent significant changes, with Norman bishops and clergy replacing their Anglo-Saxon predecessors. This ecclesiastical shift aligned the English Church more closely with continental practices and papal authority, further integrating England into the broader European context. The Norman conquest and the subsequent impositions marked a definitive end to Anglo-Saxon England, as the old social and political structures were dismantled and replaced with Norman institutions. These transformations laid the foundations for a new era in English history, characterised by a more centralised and feudal society, greater connectivity with Europe, and a lasting legacy of Norman culture and governance. The profound changes initiated by William and his successors continued to shape England for centuries, underscoring the enduring impact of the Norman conquest. What a journey we have had together. I hope you have enjoyed the video and learned a thing or two. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe to support the channel, and as always, sleep well.